Hi everyone, it's Crystal and Greg from Comfort and Growth.
Is it both of us now?
You see what I did there, Greg?
Welcome to my podcast. Welcome to our podcast. Okay.
I decided to enlist you. This is my secret strategy.
Right.
That's why I called it Comfort and Growth. It's CNG.
Okay.
I'm gonna get you in there.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for having me always on your podcast.
Life's just so much easier when you're around, Greggy. All right. So today we are going to be taking a very interesting question, and I'm going to read it out in a moment, but it's all about self-love and self-compassion. Someone's asked me this weekend about how do we know what self-compassion is? What's the difference between self-love, self-care, and also when do we know when to give ourselves tough love and, a kick up the backside and say, come on, you got to get going with it. And when do we know how to give ourselves soft love? And which one is better, soft love or tough love? Okay, so let me read out this question. You ready, Greg?
Yep.
Okay, I have been trying to practice self-love myself, but I find it extremely hard. For example, trying to be more compassionate to myself is really tough, especially when the inner critic has guided me my whole life. Compassion is also a big word, so I think having examples of how we can accept ourselves and be more compassionate would be helpful. Also, I think self-love involves both tender love, like being kind to oneself, and also tough love, knowing when we need to push ourselves when we should. So hearing your thoughts on when to push and pull these two strings would be great too. Wow, that was a very profound question.
Yeah,
no?
great question. Thank you, of course, for sending in your questions to Crystal, or should I say to us? And it's such an important topic. You know, as a therapist, of course, I've been working with individual clients for almost 25 years at this point. And so much of the time, there's a lot of inner criticism. There's a lot of self-blame. There's a lot of putting yourself down more than is actually needed or helpful.
In the personal growth retreats that we run, Greg, so much of personal growth is just self-acceptance and self-love, right?
Yeah.
That is the ultimate journey. And I always think that you can travel thousands of miles trying to, adventure to the furthest corners of the earth to try to find yourself. But really the most meaningful journey is 12 inches from your head to your heart. And what do I mean? It's kind of getting out of our judgments, our criticism of our mind, the kind of like evaluations and that, that harshness, and then really managing to open up a channel to our heart and tap into the power of our own love for ourselves. And instead of channeling that love outwards into the whole world, giving my mother, giving my kids, giving everyone, how do we actually take that ability to love with such generosity and turn it around so that we show ourselves that same generosity and acceptance?
Yeah, because for many of us, it's so much easier to be kind and caring and loving to others. When your friend has, struggled with something, you're there for him or her. You listen to them, to treat them with kindness. You say it's perfectly normal to feel this way at this moment. But when you're in the same situation, a lot of people are like, oh, I shouldn't feel like this. Why am I such an idiot? Oh, I should be over this already. Or why am I like this again and again?
So let's break down, because we're educators as well, Greg, let's break down the three elements of self-compassion. So self-compassion is a very well-researched field, and the leading researcher in this on this is Dr. Kristen Neff, right? And she defines self-compassion as having three elements. The first one is, instead of self-judgment, moving to self-acceptance, right? So this is the ability not to criticize or treat ourselves harshly and unkindly, looking at ourselves through critical eyes, but to be able to treat ourselves like our own best friend, right? Having that element of warmth towards ourselves. So sometimes I say instead of being our own worst critic actually being our own best coach.
Yeah, absolutely. And being really for yourself.
Yeah. And that means that, that inner dialogue that runs through your mind from the moment you wake up, if you can hear this little inner critic voice going, oh, you're lazy, already late, oh, it's just like you can't do anything right. That's the inner critic. And that the first shift is shifting your inner critic voice to your inner coach voice, right? Because we actually hold multitudes. There are many different little inner voices in us, but sometimes we get so used to tuning into the radio channel of the inner critic, we forget there's also an inner wisdom or inner sort of like coach voice of ours, which is there that says, you can do this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's the first element, staying out of self-judgment and moving to self-acceptance. The second element of self-compassion is a belief in common humanity and instead of isolation. So what does that mean? That means instead of thinking I am the only one who's a freak, a weirdo, I'm the only one who struggles, there's no one like me, this like that, to actually, the second mindset is shifting to a mindset that everyone struggles. It's perfectly normal to struggle. Everyone struggles in the world and there's nothing weird, abnormal about me.
Yeah, and everybody experiences the full range of emotions. And that's perfectly okay from time to time to feel angry, disappointed, sad, frustrated, or whatever it may be.
My psychologist, Volker, always said to me, it's all part of the human experience. Every time I was feeling like, is it just me? Is this like okay? Like, we don't tend to, share our innermost insecurities. So most people, they go through life just like holding all these negative emotions or beliefs just inside, clinging onto them. And I always say it's like comparing your insides to other people's outsides. On the outside, everyone seems like they're with it. They've got, their success, their game face on. And actually on the inside, because we talk to so many different people, we coach them, right, Greg? We are very familiar that on the inside, even the most powerful CEOs and executives, everyone on the inside is the same.
Yeah, of course. I mean, all this social media and online photos, of course, make that a lot worse because, as you said, everybody's posting all the nice stuff, their holidays and their successes and their beautiful experiences. And when you just see those, it may feel like, oh, well, how come I'm the only one that's feeling sad or disappointed?
Yeah, so social media can be very isolating. It can feel like, oh my God, all my friends are in the south of France or in Japan skiing, and I'm the only one that is, eating cold pizza in my kitchen, crying to myself. So social media can be very isolating, and if you feel that social media is becoming toxic to you, or it's not helpful for you, then take a break, right? Okay, so let's go to the third element of self-compassion, which is all about mindfulness and mindfulness versus over-identification. So what does that mean? Mindfulness is the ability to zoom out and actually not get so attached to any negative or any positive, in fact, emotion or experiences. Be able to zoom out and take a bird's eye view that okay, right now I'm noticing that I'm experiencing some sadness in my body, and I can feel, like a twisting in my gut. I can feel an emptiness in my heart. And mindfulness is being able to zoom out and say, well, this is one thought that I'm experiencing now, rather than over-identification is, I am a sad person. I am lonely. I am repressed. I am depressed.
No, I'm an idiot. Like, you may have done something like, oh, I'm such an idiot. It's just a thought that's going through your mind.
Yeah.
If you have an ability to let it pass through and not really make it your truth about yourself, then it loses its power.
Exactly. So over-identification is I am a loser, and mindfulness is I'm noticing, I'm having a thought in my mind that says I'm a loser. And can you see how that's such a huge difference? In fact, in psychology, we call this technique diffusion. And Greg and I have taught this technique to more than 16,000 students, more than 50,000 people around the world. It's a practical technique whereby every time you catch a negative label in your mind, like I'm a loser, I am no good, I am lazy, we teach people how to reframe to I am noticing that I'm having a thought that I am ... And that's a much more neutral way, a much more mindful way of seeing the world.
And it has less of a negative impact over you.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Because when we think of our identity as I am, that's where we go into like shame. That's where we go into hopelessness.
Yeah, it's very hard to be anything else but that.
Yeah, exactly.
It becomes you.
Exactly. I want to talk about the next element of this question. What's the difference between self-love and self-care?
Okay, great question. Self-love really goes to the core of you. That's your internal belief about yourself, whether you are really for yourself, whether you really love yourself, whether you believe you are lovable, whether you're worthy of love and respect from other people.
Yeah, and what is self-care then?
And self-care are the behaviors that you engage in to take care of yourself. This could be eating healthily, this could be exercising, this could be getting enough sleep. Behaviors that take care and nourish your mind, your body, your heart.
Yeah, but it's not the same thing, right?
No,
Because
absolutely not.
sometimes there are these situations where, for instance, you could force yourself to go to a yoga class, and the whole time you're in the yoga class, you're thinking, I'm so fat, I'm not good like this other person that cannot do chaturanga.
Yeah, you're constantly comparing yourself to all the other people, and you end up saying like, oh, I'm not as good, beautiful, flexible,
Yeah.
thin, capable as all these other people, and you walk out actually feeling worse about yourself. Even, of course, the act of yoga is good for your body.
Yeah, so that wouldn't be self-love, and I would argue it wouldn't be self-care as well.
No, or even at an extreme, like even for men, a lot of men compulsively going to the gym, exercising, which exercising itself, of course, it's healthy for the body, but there's almost a compulsive way of, if I don't have a six-pack, I won't be perceived as worthy of love and attention. I will actually internally feel inadequate.
And I have a lot of friends who look incredible and they look absolutely fantastic and they eat very healthy. They do all the right things. They, don't eat any fried foods. They do intermittent fasting. But a lot of times when I talk to some of them and I ask them why they're doing it, it comes from a place of not self-love, but in fact self-loathing or
Yeah.
self-criticism.
And it becomes almost compulsive, and it's driven by a sense of a lack of something, or if only I was, then I will be
Yeah.
lovable and accepted.
So it's all about like the fuel which is motivating you, right?
Yeah, is it fear or is it love? Is
Exactly.
it caring for yourself, and I'm doing this out of respect for myself.
Yeah, so those two fuels, like you said, fear or love, so important because I can go to the gym out of fear, like, I don't want to get fat. And that's going to be less self-loving experience than if I go to the gym because I want to take care of myself and I believe my body is beautiful and worthy and fantastic and I want to take care of this amazing piece of equipment and machinery that I have.
Yeah, and that you are in the gym in the sense of it's already that amazing awe of how your body can move and function, the health that you already have.
I don't know if I feel awe at how amazing my body is.
Well,
at the
it's
gym,
interesting. It's like, because I was sick quite recently and I
Yeah.
couldn't breathe very well. I was coughing a lot and I had to use an inhaler. It's sometimes only when we don't have our health that we realize how amazing it is when we don't have the pain or we can't breathe.
Totally, like meditation teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, who's passed away, used to talk about, the joy of not toothache, right?
Exactly,
He said,
exactly.
he gave this whole talk about like how he had recovered from a toothache and now he discovered the joy of not having a toothache, which he
Yeah.
never appreciated before.
Yeah, and that's so amazing. Being in the gym or whatever you're doing is like, right now my body can move like this, or right now I can rest and relax like this, and there's nothing else needed. Not to say that, of course, your body can get stronger and you can also push yourself. I mean, that was part of the second
Right.
part of the question we're going to get to in a moment. It doesn't mean you can improve, but right now there's already a sense of enoughness, of perfectness
Okay,
within
Greg,
you.
I'm going to overshare something now.
Okay.
Okay, Greg and I
Comfort, growth, and oversharing. Huh?
you know I'm a compulsive oversharer, Greg.
Yes. That's coming from a place of love, right?
Yeah, of course. It's coming from a place of self-love and love for our viewers. Greg has no idea what I'm going to say, but
No idea.
okay, we go to Body Pump and we've been going for many years. Greg is a serial body pumper. Okay, sounds wrong, but he's a serial body pumper. He's been going.
Used to be.
You've been going for like a decade, Greg.
I've been doing many things for decades.
Okay, so here's the interesting thing. When I first started going to Body Pump, because Greg dragged me along.
Oh, really? It sounds like a victim language.
Yes, definitely victim mindset here. Anyway, when I went along, I noticed that there were these aunties. There are some aunties in Body Pump, right? And they are very, very hardcore, okay? They have like, I don't know, like 20 kilo weights. They are really loading themselves to the max, right? And then I look over and Greg's like, always got the same. He's always got like, okay, he's giving me a judgy look now. He's got like...
You're calling me weak
I'm not
on air.
Okay, Greg. It's just like, they are very, how do I put this?
This is like helping me to deal with a critical voice.
Yeah. Okay, sure. You got very moderate weights. Should I say very moderate weights on? So like, and it's through the months that we did Body Pump together that I never saw you actually really increase your body pump weights lah, to put it that way. So, sometimes I would have a little jibe at you and I'd be like, hey, don't you think you want to kind of push yourself a bit? And you would always be like, no, I'm very happy how it is. But like my mentality is like, okay, if I'm going to the gym, I want to see progress. I want to increase the weights. I want to push myself. And a lot of times I'll be like really pushing myself, like, you can do this. And I'll look over and you're like taking a chill pill. You're like, doing Shavasana. You're doing
I'm not doing Shavasana.
Okay, yeah, sorry. You're doing child's pose next to me. You do. Okay, not body pump, but like when we do like yoga or something, like a lot of times I'm like killing myself.
Yes.
And I look over and you're like really taking a chill pill, right?
It's called self-compassion in action. If that's where the story is going.
No, I have no idea where this is going, but it's sort of like where coming to our dear readers' question is like, when do you know when to push yourself, tough love? And when do you know, this is a metaphor, a gym metaphor, when do you know when to push yourself and when do you know when to like actually take care of yourself? Comfort and growth. Like when I go to the gym, I constantly want to get better. I constantly want to increase the weights. But like for you, you tend to be more of a kind of like, I'll do it, but if I'm not comfortable, I will just not do it sort of person. Much more so than I am lah. I think we can all agree on that.
Can we all
Yes.
agree?
All
All the
all the
listeners.
listeners. I think we can all agree that I am much more comfortable pushing myself into the pain zone than Greg is. I got very high pain tolerance and I'm much more tough love kind of push myself person than you are, Greg. Honestly.
How's that working out for you?
Pretty good. Okay, guys. So the question is tough love versus soft love. Like, which one is better? And I would say that Greg just hit on a very important point, which is how's that working for you, right? Because I think the litmus test is always being aware and trying to monitor, like, is that working? Is it not working? And if it's working, then keep at it. If what you are doing is working, i.e. the tough love or the soft love, it's creating results that you want to see in your life, you're feeling great about it, then keep on doing it. Because it's all different. Like I'm a tough love person, is a little bit more on the pushing myself side, and it works for me. But sometimes I have the self-awareness to know that when it's too much, when Crystal, you're being a bit too critical, you're being a bit too perfectionist, let's just get the podcast out, it doesn't need to be perfect. That is when I have the self-awareness to actually, and the inner wisdom to go, you need to recalibrate and move a little bit back to the sort of self-love and self-compassion part.
Yeah, I mean, also I think it's not an issue which is better or which one, is right or wrong. They're both really essential. But you need to be able to tune in and ask yourself at this moment, what is called for.
So when it comes to tough love or self-love, right? Let's give some practical examples. So I would say that inverted commas, self-love is like, being kind to yourself, giving yourself a break, relaxation, saying it's okay, you don't need to do this. having some self-care, taking a break, for example, all that is self-love. Speaking to a friend who can give you some emotional support. Whereas tough love to me is kind of like when you tell yourself, come on, you got this, pick yourself up, try harder, do more weights, you can push harder, you can do that one step further. You can, and by the way, I would say tough love is always with the attitude of coming from speaking to yourself in an encouraging and a respectful way. It's not like, you're a effing loser, you do this because otherwise you'll be a piece of shit. That's not tough love to me. That's not love at all. But tough love to me is like, you can do it, you can grow, you can get better, right? So tough love involves, for instance, I might give myself, some deadlines. Tough love may mean setting boundaries with myself or with other people. Tough love might mean, giving myself or other people feedback like, this is not acceptable, this can't happen again. So
You're not making excuses for yourself or for others.
exactly. So tough love sometimes means having difficult conversations or wake up calls with myself or other people. And that's also very important because I feel like it's about having that balance of soft and tough love that actually creates the results that we want in our life.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm in my own perspective, working with thousands of people individually and also in groups, is in general, I think a lot of people need a lot more of the self love, the self compassion.
I would say, Greg, that a lot of people need more self-love with themselves
Yes.
and more tough love with
Yes,
others.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah, a lot of people who come to me, I would say 99% of them, they are showing too self-love with other people,
Yes.
not enforcing boundaries,
Yes.
not as self-advocating, and they are showing too tough love to themselves, speaking to themselves unkindly and using like mean language internally on
Yeah,
themselves.
and it's ironic that they're often afraid, like, oh, if I show myself a little bit more love, am I going to be weak, or is this going to be just make me unsuccessful in work? It's like that's not your issue at all that you have.
Yeah, so many CEOs and leaders come to me and they're like, I'm really scared that if I become soft, then I will lose my edge. And so much of my success is fueled on like pushing, pushing, pushing. And the first thing I say to them is that, okay, you can operate from two fuels. You can operate from fear or you can operate from love. And both can give you results. Yeah. But the question is, at what cost? If you compulsively operate from fear and pushing yourself and criticism and, being unkind to yourself, yeah, sure, you may get results, but at what cost? It might cost you your health. It might cost you your relationships with others. It might cause you to burn bridges. It might cause you
Undermine your own
self-worth
and confidence.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, your bank account might look, very wealthy, but inside you probably feel like spiritually bankrupt or morally depleted. Yeah, so at what cost? So it's a lot more sustainable when we operate from the fuel of I do it because I love myself. I do it because I'm curious about what if. I do it because I want to grow and I want to learn. And that's a little bit linked to that growth mindset that we often talk about, right?
Absolutely.
I think another important thing to note is that oftentimes we have this inner critic voice that is formed that as a protective mechanism, right? Like a lot of times our inner critic formed when we were quite young and its function is to take care and to protect ourselves. So the inner critic might say things like, hey, wake up lah, you better not oversleep or you better set your alarm. You better double check that piece of work. And when we are young, it performs a very important function, right? Because like we need it to help us grow up and be more responsible and more accountable, that sort of stuff. But oftentimes when we get older, that inner critic voice becomes so familiar and so tyrannical that it actually drowns out our other aspects of self, the ability to show ourselves self-compassion.
Well, in particular, if you had maybe a parent or caregiver or teacher early on in your years being overly critical, and then you end up internalizing their critical voices, and many years later when you're a young adult or you're an adult, you keep repeating those old critical voices and they become the dominant voice maybe in your head and they drive all your behavior.
one of my psychologist friends, Yutka, when I would go for a session with her, I would say, oh, and I'm thinking this way, and she would pause me and say, whose voice is that? And I would say, my voice. And she would say, no, who is speaking? And I would be like, oh shit, that's my mom's voice. Or then I'd say something, and then I will become, and then I'll lose out, and she'd be like pausing me, whose voice is that? And I'd be like, my voice. And she's like, I don't think that's your voice. And I'd be like, oh yeah, oh shit, that's my dad's voice. Or that's insert whatever authority figure's voice. Because when we were young, we hear all these messages and these beliefs, right? Oh, you better not do this, otherwise your life's going to be like that. Or people who are like this do things like that way. And oftentimes we like carry around this whole bag of beliefs with us, and we don't actually audit them and realize that actually, oh, this one comes from this person, this one comes from that person. And I found it such a useful construct mentally to keep on asking myself, whose voice is that?
Yeah, and has it served its purpose maybe many, many years ago that you got the message, you learned from it, but repeating it now and applying it to every life situation doesn't actually serve you in a positive way. And then also recognizing that by you constantly replaying it in your mind, it's become a really unhelpful habit. That's also really hard to break, because in every situation, it's like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, or, I'm such an idiot, or whatever it is that your, internal critic is telling you. And that's why it's also hard to break these. It may feel like, well, that's the first thing I'm waking up with is like, oh, why didn't I wake up half an hour earlier and done my yoga and my cold plunge bath and whatever else, and then already starting off criticizing yourself.
I think in general, while we are living in the age of wellness and self-care, it's also important to keep on checking, why am I doing this? Is this from a place of true self-love? I'm doing this because I want to nourish myself. Or am I doing that cold bath, forcing myself to run? Am I forcing myself to fast because it comes from a place of punishing or judging?
I should be doing this. I must be doing it, and then I will be a good person.
Envy, compulsion, and all of that. In fact, there is a term called orthorexia, right? Orthorexia is a condition where you're compulsively thinking that you need to be eating healthy, doing healthy things, and it's actually like a mental compulsion, which is not healthy. So like my dad always says, everything in moderation, even moderation, and always examine which is the fuel that is driving this behavior. Does this come from a place of fear, or does this come from a place of love?
Absolutely. And so like, to answer the question, well, what can you do about this? How can you develop more self-compassion and dial down the inner critic? Well, you have to start speaking to yourself in a different voice.
Yeah. Changing your voice.
Clearing out the stuff that doesn't serve you or gets in the way of expressing yourself in a more kind way. So what I mean is, let me start again. In order for you to be less self-critical, and in order for you to be more kind with yourself and find a new voice that is for yourself, you got to practice that voice. So you got to break the old habit of immediate self-criticism and undermining yourself by simply internally praising yourself, finding kind words, noticing when things are going well and making a big deal out of them. Because again, your brain has that negativity bias to easily pick up on stuff that isn't going well, and then you personalize that. And instead look at when a presentation went well, like really reflect on that same day, say, oh, wow, actually, I'm really proud of how I presented. Or when a client conversation went well, it's like, oh, I actually listened really well to that client. And that will start dialing down that internal self-criticism, and you will embody and become this new person.
I want to share with you 3 short practical phrases that I use constantly in my head, whether I'm going up on stage to do public speaking, whether I'm about to do something very, very difficult. I will always tell myself some variation of these 3 sentences. Like the first one is like, you've got this. Yeah, you can do it. The second one is, you are growing, and that's amazing. And the third one is, you're born to do this. And I think those 3 sentences, it might be different for you, but have a think about what are those short little phrases, you've got this, that you can keep on telling yourself throughout the day so that it becomes, that's a reprogramming. You're reprogramming your brain to talk to yourself kindly and give yourself encouraging messages, because otherwise you may not be aware, but the number of, negative messages like, oh, you can't do it, you can't make it, oh, you're lousy, whatever, then becomes the default mode of your brain.
Yeah, absolutely. A great way of practicing that as well at the end of the day, perhaps, or during the day, journaling about when things are going well and when you've done something that you can feel even a tiny bit proud of. By writing about it, you are saving it in your brain. It becomes a habit on noticing and focusing on all the strengths that you already have.
Yeah. So like at the end of every day, at the start of every day, I should say, I actually set myself a affirmation or intention, and I will write something in my journal like, you are strong, or, you don't need any more mom guilt. Oops, oversharing. Or, you are attracting opportunities into your life effortlessly. So I like just write whatever comes to mind, but every day I try to like give myself a specific positive message.
Yeah, and a great way of bringing it to the next level if you have a partner, even sharing that with somebody else. It could be a partner, it could be a friend, it could be, even texting somebody. It's like, hey, today what worked really well, or what I'm proud of. Yeah, I just wanted to share with you something that worked out well today.
Greg, what's your affirmation for the day?
Today I'm proud of recording a podcast.
You should be very proud, Greg. He's normally, well, not normally. I should say that Greg is somebody who is a very, very fast learner. And when we first started off doing recording, he was quite camera shy. And these days, I think
Brain frozen.
exposure therapy, you're no longer deer in the headlights, Greggy, but you've grown so much.
It is a journey.
Yeah, so I'm always very grateful to you, my love, for appearing on these podcasts.
Yeah, but it's a great example, because at the beginning, when it was really challenging for me.
Wait, come back. Yeah.
So this is a great example, Crystal. Thank you for speaking about my personal experience. At the beginning, it was true. It was really difficult for me, and there was a lot of self-criticism. I don't know what to say. I looked stupid. My brain froze. I was unclear. And then after the recording, it's like, oh, you're an idiot. Why can't you do it? It was a lot of comparing myself to Crystal, where it seemed so natural.
But you're the one that's actually qualified. I always say that.
Yeah, of course. And then it's like, oh my God, I have the qualifications. Why can't I just,
You're a doctorate.
Talk about it in front of the camera? You're such an idiot, such a loser. So my self-criticism was very strong. And now after, repeatedly doing it,
exposure therapy,
not walking away from it every time saying the same old story, like, he's an idiot, this is terrible, but saying like, hey, this was a lot better than the last time. Not perfect yet. I can, there's that tough love. Yeah, I can grow, I can push myself more, but I did good enough, and I did my best, and I showed up more, and
you're amazing, Greggy.
Connecting with that. And then of course, if you get some affirmation from others, that helps as well.
Yeah, and I always say like, there's a great book called The Gap and the Gain, and it's like not looking backwards to the gap, or looking at the gap between who you are right now and like where you want to be, but always looking at the gain. Like, how much better are you now? How much have we progressed? How much more natural? How much more effortless? How much
younger?
On that note, there's been a lot of self-love, and there's been a lot of love in this episode. We're so happy to have you with us. And we'll tune in next week for Confident Growth, the podcast for people who are passionate about oversharing, personal growth, and productivity. See ya!
And self-love. Bye-bye.
Bye.